Hey everyone, welcome to the tech capital of the world. Kevin, I'm sorry I'm late. Technology issues, man.
You weren't late. Technology was late.
You get all these fancy setups and they don't work.
Sometimes they don't work. Well, they don't work when you make, you know what you did? You did the cardinal sin of you pushed to production at 5 p.m. on a Friday. Is what happened.
Yeah, that's what happened. Thanks, OBS.
You had an update just before we went live, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
and now it doesn't work.
We'll update to OBS. That won't cause any problems.
Sure.
Sure it will.
It will. It definitely will.
So we figured it out. So we're here.
Yeah, we're here.
So we're good.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we thought we haven't done it live in a minute.
Yeah, tech capital of the world back in here. Back again.
Yeah, we thought we haven't talked about AI in a while. So last time we did like a demo was a while ago. So we thought we'd kind of jump back in, right? So
what's that behind you on your right shoulder there? What's that little thing you got back there? Other side.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's the little plaque. Yeah.
Little 100K plaque.
That's a little plaque. We
like
got
it.
one each. Yours isn't on the wall yet. Actually, I have the other one to bring over to you. Actually.
Yeah. I like it though.
Yeah. It looks shiny, doesn't it? It's a little mirror. Yeah, so we thought we'd jump on and do a little live coding, right? Before we do that, though, I want to ask you, like, so you've been using AI, like, coding for a while now. What's your, like, sort of nebulous view on this? Where do you think this is going? What do you think we're...
Right.
What are we dealing with?
So what I'm getting ready to show you is what I think the pinnacle of AI coding is. And then when we release things about, I think it was a video, the last couple of videos we released, we talked about AI, the stack, and where the opportunities are.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of comments about there's no reason to learn to code because this is all going away.
Right.
And I don't want to name the guy because I'm not trying to name and shame people. That's not what we're about. We're here to encourage people to like pursue careers, what we think is the best thing. And but one particular content was saying that we were just disingenuous, saying we know that this is ending.
Right. And we're just pushing it because, well, you want to teach people to code.
Right.
It's like,
because I work for OpenAI, I guess, I have this inside baseball knowledge, or I should see this coming and I know that it's coming and there are going to be no developer jobs. This is all going to end. And here's what I think that a developer does. And a lot of people that are telling me this have not, A, written a website, or B, haven't written a web application. Maybe you've written a website, but I very doubt that you have worked at a company like in my career over the last 25 years where you've worked at really large companies on really large things and you see what the complexities are.
Yeah, we were talking about those complexities yesterday. We were talking like the number of databases on a certain like application you worked on was like 500 and something. And I was like, is that a lot? And you're like, well, I've doing tables. Yeah. He's like 500 tables. Yeah. And I was like, is that a lot? You're like, well, I've worked on one that's 1,500. I was like,
kind of, I mean, okay. Is a million records a lot in a database? Not really. I mean, like it's a lot, and then it's also not a lot because there's been other things where it's got like, a lot of records in it. And I'm sure that some of the people are watching, like, I've been in databases that have 100 million records in it. So as the complexity rises, what I think that people are going to find out is that AI in general for coding becomes less useful. And so let me back up and say this one thing. Number one, what do developers do? And I think this is the primary misinformation that we get from people, that we don't know what developers really, really do. The first thing a developer does is have domain knowledge. So if you're going to build a website that processes medical claims, which I've done, then you need to know what a medical claim is, what medical codes are. You need to understand the domain that you're operating in. I've also worked on websites that generate health and welfare benefits. So and that's when people go sign up for insurance at the company you work at, you got to understand like what is that process? What are people doing? What is a medical plan? What's a family status change? What is all this?
It's a bunch of business stuff, right? Including terminology and kind of like business flows.
Right. So you can't build an app unless you understand the domain of knowledge, right? And so one of the comments we had on the website is that and literally this guy said, in the next 2 to 3 years, any average Joe will be able to Google and build a website. And it's
you know how long that promise has been there?
For a long time.
Probably 25 years.
25 years.
Since front page. That's what I would say. And when front page came out, they're like, front page, developers are dead. It's drag and drop now. We don't have to, 25 years ago.
And so when OpenAI when ChatGPT came out, OpenAI's been around since 2015. They've been working on this for a pretty long time. And so we get the chatbot out. That comes out, what is it, 2 years now?
Yeah, they're coming up on 2, yeah.
Maybe 3 years in November or 2 years in it's not very long, but you would think that problem one for replacing coders would be an HTML and CSS website that ought to be able to replicate that at a pretty competent level for us to ever sit there and say, this is the end of all development.
Well, because we're saying that's the easiest thing to do, right?
It is the easiest thing to do.
Right.
But if we look at the state of content management systems today, we're like, okay, there's still people spending lots of money, lots of companies, Wix, Squarespace, WordPress. There's a lot of things out there that are serviced to build a static website with images and CSS and maybe some JavaScript, maybe a form or two.
Yeah.
If you look at the state of Squarespace, you can say, okay, you can build a website. It can put a form on it. That's kind of it, and then that's the pinnacle of this. And if you said, I'm going to take ChatGPT, I'm going to make a competitor to Squarespace right now in the current iteration, the current sandbox, impossible.
Right.
You can't do it.
Right.
And so the thing that should be boilerplate generated isn't. And what I would say is when we look at things that are the simple repetitive tasks that we do, and we have boilerplate to create those things for us, that is actually superior than what we could write into a prompt into an OpenAI Copilot prompt or ChatGPT. Say, generate me a template for a website that does X.
Right.
It's not as good. And so that's the first job number one is you got to understand the domain knowledge. The second thing a programmer does is understand the stack they're working on. So you've got to understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in order to build a website. Period.
Right.
If you want to prompt a website, you got to also know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to be able to prompt a website because you got to be able to formulate a prompt in order to get the AI to generate something back to you in a reasonable fashion.
Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit, haven't we? Because it's the argument against that is, well, I can just describe it. I can just say, I want this here and this here and this here. But describing that thing is actually more difficult than you realize without knowing the terminology.
Right. So one of the comments we have on the YouTube channel, and I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to shame the guy, but I don't think he's built a website before, and he may have. He definitely hasn't built a web application before, but he was saying that in the next 2 to 3 years, and maybe it was 1 year.
I think it was 1 year.
It doesn't even matter. He says, I'm going to be able to type in everything I want in a website, in a prompt, and it's just going to make it. And what I want to tell people is that you're going to be very, 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 very disappointed in that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't do that. And I don't know if it ever can, because it's got it's good at generating code. And you'll see here when we get into Copilot, you'll see kind of what it does, but it's still got to be nuanced, and the coder has to integrate these kind of things in there, and the programmer still has to make decisions. Can it make me type faster? In some cases, yes. Is it going to make me a 10x developer like everyone says? And so if you say, if it makes me a 10x developer, 90% of the developers on the face of planet Earth are going to be out of a job. There's only going to be the very top end of the coders, the prop engineer of prop engineers, the 1% or the 10% of those guys are gonna have jobs. That's false. It's not gonna happen. Now, here's why people say that. The CEO of NVIDIA came out and said it's the end of all coders, right? That's one of the things he prompted it out, because he's making not only the chips to train the models, but also putting all the compute together for inference. And inference is the ones that run the model after it's been trained. It's the implementation of ChatGPT right there, where you can type in a prompt and it does the inference, looks up the model, brings back a result. That's a different kind of compute than when they do the training. And so NVIDIA says they're going to have 80% of all inference on the face of planet Earth. So anyone that's running any kind of AI thing, their hardware is going to run it. And so what does he say? It's the end of coding. Because he thinks he can create code. I don't know the CEO from NVIDIA from I probably couldn't pick him out as he's walking down the street. I've seen a picture of him, but if he came to Crumble here beside us and got a cookie, I wouldn't know if he came, but whatever. So, but what I would say is, I don't think that he's building United Airlines, a ticketing system for United Airlines. And I would think that he's never done that in his career. He's done something else. That's what I would guess. I could be wrong. So tell me if I'm wrong, but he hasn't done it in a minute when he's saying that. I think what he's saying is, I'm going to make all the inference there is. Therefore, I got to give you a reason to buy it, because I'm investing billions, hundreds of billions of dollars into this. So there needs to be a reason for you to buy it. And so Microsoft's the same way. They're going to say, hey, you know what? You need to buy all this AI stack that we're building out. And there's got to be a use case, because a really good use case is if you run United Airlines and you have 1,000 developers, or maybe it's 20,000 developers making your airlines work. And you're like, man, could we make more money, Kevin, if we fired all those people? And the answer is, yeah, we could make more money.
Right.
Until it broke. And then we would have to find people to fix our broken stuff.
Oh, and I don't think it will be fixable at that point. I think that's
right.
The problem too.
And so what I've also heard is people say that, that coding languages aren't important anymore. Stacks aren't important anymore. Therefore, when you prompt, you don't have to know about the stack. You don't have to know anything about it. It'll pick all the stacks for you. And that tells me right off the bat, when you say that, these stacks have a reason. And they're not just so that humans can code it. Yes, they are. The language is something that we can transcribe when we look at it. But the stack itself is important because the stacks do certain things. CSS
there's a lot more to it.
Does something different than what JavaScript does. HTML does something different than what CSS does. C# does something different than what these other things do. You can't just have Python running everything. They just do different things, and therefore the stack has to do it. And what everyone's saying was the AI will figure out the stack. Well, we make choices for reasons, performance reasons, whatever. And if we don't know about the stack, it's up to the black box to figure out what the stack is. And what I'm saying is, if you let it do that, then sometimes it will give you a new solution, a new code thing that's not in the stack that it is suggested previously 5 minutes before. And so you really have to scale it in. Now, can we, with an open AI assistant, go out and say, here's the rules of the road? I think part of that's possible. Here's the rules of the road. Here's things that you can do. Here's things that we want to restrict it does. And for the most part, sometimes it will kind of stay in that rules of road. You'll see me do that with Copilot today. But you'll see that when I build something today with current tools, I have to know a lot of stuff about coding to make this even remotely possible to build even the most, what I would call, basic website. And our website's going to have an API endpoint that we're going to call. But again, if I gave this to my mom, and even if the AI could generate perfect executable code, my mom will never be able to generate this because she doesn't even know what an API is.
Right.
And then when you talk about different classes of people, it's like you have to know something.
We talked about this. You have to know the right questions to ask.
Yeah, you won't even know what the questions to ask. So if you want it to generate a web page, while you can say, build me a web page that sells Nike shoes, and that's all I need to do, and the CEO of Nike can now make the e-commerce site for Nike, it's impossible. It's impossible. It's way more complicated than that. Then the other thing that you'll see is what about the development environment that you have to set up? Can it do that? Well, currently no, because ChatGPT can't write to your machine that you're on. So it's not going to create folders for you or structure folders. It can tell you what folders to create, but you got to go do it. And you're saying, well, could we use code spaces, so some kind of hosted thing, and get an AI assistant to do that? Yeah, you can. That's definitely possible. But is that what the company wants to do? Do we want to host development and production and QA all in virtual machines up in Azure? I'm sure some companies are doing it. But will the AI assistants have rights to all of those? That's another problem to solve. So can it be solved? Maybe. And this is the point that I'm making, is when you start really thinking about of all the things that we got to do in order just to write a basic website, it's a lot more invention than people think. And therefore, we're 10 years out. Easy, just to do some kind of basic things. And I would say is, let's take automating Git for an example. Let's say I want to automate a Git release process. Okay. And let's say I've got 13 instances of a web server or some kind of cluster on Azure or whatever, and I want to put those in an order, and I want to have an orderly release of whatever, and it's going to get this thing. People automate that every single day using either GitHub Actions or some kind of automated through some kind of scripts or shells or whatever. They're doing that all the time,
right?
But they have control over it. And when it changes, they can change it. What people are saying is, I want to take that process times every other process times every other environment that's ever been made, and then I'm just going to say publish, and it'll do it. Right. Because I don't need to know where it's going, and so even the decision of whether it should go to Azure or AWS would be abstracted from this theoretical prompt engineer that has no idea where this is going. Right. They don't even know what the cost benefit of this would be when I pushed it out. How much is this going to cost me per month? AI would go, I don't know, but I've got your credit card.
And while these ideas are great, it's like
the
idea is like, it's great. Because ultimately what we want is a button, and you click a button and it creates everything for you, it throws it up and does everything, and that's it, right? We are so far from that at this point.
Excuse me.
We're not even close. I mean, we're not even close. We're a long way away from that. But that's the promise, right? That's what we're being told is ultimately going to be the deliverable here, is push button solution where you just say, give me this thing, and it just does everything, deploys it, maintains it, everything. It's just...
And when I see people say that, even when they give it what I would call a short-term avenue, 36 months, 3 years from now. Therefore, people today are telling us on YouTube and in there, it's like, I'm not going to become a coder because of AI.
Right.
And they'll tell me, I don't understand it, but they do. And I'm like, but you've never built a website. How could you ever understand this? And I'm not saying they're stupid. They're smart people, but they've bought into the sales pitch from a lot of people.
Let's say the sales pitch from Devin. Let's talk about this real quick.
Yeah.
So Devin, what's this? I mean, this is the latest thing on Devin, is that they're basically accused of lying. And we said this from the beginning, which is like, when we talked about this originally, you and I was like, something doesn't feel right here. It feels wrong. And then some other people, including Internet of Bugs here, Carl here, did a great, if you haven't watched this video, go watch this video on YouTube. It's great. Go look up Internet of Bugs after this and go watch this video because it's great. They talk about the perfect scenario they asked Devin to do, and they give it this Upwork challenge. And it turns out when you actually look at it, it's just full of junk. It didn't even come up with a solution at the end of the day. Some of the stuff they asked it to do wasn't the same. They gave it a perfect scenario. It's there's a whole bunch of reasons why Devin isn't what you think it is. You can't ask it for a prompt. The idea is great. This iteration over itself, this agent thing is great. This multimodal thing is great. The ideas are amazing. It's just smoke and mirrors. It doesn't actually work. And I'll tell you why. It's because if you start looking at their page here, this section right here tells you everything that you need to know
they're raising
about why
money
they're telling you. They're raising money.
Here's the other thing that should let you in on this. If me and Kevin went out and created Devin, and Devin could do side hustles on Upwork, I promise you I wouldn't be selling Devin to everyone else. I would just take the entire work of all of Upwork, and I would automate every one of those. I would charge $2 an hour or something over and above whatever it costs to do the job based on my AI compute, and just dominate the market and make, $1 billion or whatever the amount of money that's flowing through.
It would be a lot, wouldn't it?
It all.
Yeah.
All of it. Because it can do it without anyone else. And I wouldn't give this technology out to everyone else. I would just own it. If this was possible, if this was something that was even in the realm of possibility, the biggest tooling company on the face of planet Earth, the one that invested $50 billion in OpenAI, would make it. Yeah. And I don't think that Microsoft can make this. And I think that they've probably sat around and talked about it. And they probably had a meeting about it. And they said, man, could we just automate coding? And, and then everyone goes, not really. I mean, how long would that take to make, guys? And they're like, there's a lot of problems here, a lot of problems, and we're not going to be able to do that. Did they release a framework that says, here's the coding assistant framework? Yeah. it is a PDF. You have to understand, like it's a flow chart. It's not real yet. And plans are also not necessarily reality when the rubber meets the road, and you're like, it kind of doesn't work.
Yeah. Plus, so I mean, Microsoft knows this too. They know that it's not a replacement. They called their tool Copilot for a reason. Mm-hmm. It is literally the person that sits next to you that assists you. It's in the name. That's how they believe.
Even in their intro video where you watch it, they say what to do with Copilot. They say, don't let it fly the plane. It doesn't fly the plane. It helps you.
Yes.
And what I would say is this is the pinnacle of what you can do. This is, in my opinion, there's other code assistants out there. You may like Claude better. You may like some other one. I forget the Codility or whatever. It's not Codility, but it's something else out there. There's 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
Copilot is, if it's not the best one, it competes heavily with everyone else. They're kind of similar in what they do and what happens. And the reason Copilot's better is because it's actually integrated into VS Code or into Visual Studio inside the IDE, whereas ChatGPT doesn't do that. So let's just forget about that as a replacement for coding from that chatbot.
Right.
That chatbot will never do that. It's a website. So like you have to pull that out and integrate it into something else. Can you write assistants and for it to do things behind the scene and run jobs? I know you can. Yes, you can. But that's a lot harder than people are making it out to be because no one has done it yet. And Devin is raising money on this. They've written an OpenAI assistant, and the OpenAI assistant runs against a chatbot. It doesn't work. In fact, if you sign up for it, they won't release it publicly yet because they don't want people to see what Internet of Bugs saw. They don't want that to happen because they won't get their next fundraise.
Exactly.
They don't want MKBHD reviewing this. That's for sure.
The first day this came out, by the way, we did sign up to try and get into this, and neither of us got access to this yet. So
sorry about that.
You find it. None of us have got access to this yet. So
yeah,
I actually don't know anybody personally that has. Does anybody here have access to it? My guess is no. I don't know anybody that has. So
okay,
I think it's smoke and mirrors. Okay, you want to do some? You want to do some coding then?
Yeah, we can do some coding, and if there's any comments or questions come up along the way,
I'll jump them up if there are.
Yeah,
I'll certainly jump in and ask you.
Let's go.
There we go.
We good now?
Yep.
All right. So this is VS Code, and I'm going to create, and I'll just run it for you what I'm going to make because I've got a sample here I want to do, and I think if I show you the sample first, it'll make sense. So this is an app we built inside here for Coder Foundry. And I've got an app here that goes to the movie API, TMDB API, and pulls back movies. And these are the popular movies endpoint. And you can see here it's got Dune, Kung Fu Panda, King Kong. Not sure what Alienoid is.
I heard of that one. Maybe I need to check that one out.
Yeah. So we like making fun of some of these. I didn't know this was popular either, but there it is, So this definitely wasn't popular, Kevin. Madam Web was definitely not popular.
I haven't seen it yet. The reviews made me avoid it.
I don't think anyone saw it, including these people's parents didn't watch this movie.
Nice.
But this is a popular movie endpoint, so we're calling an API, and that is TMDB, the movie database. And so right away, we have to know what an API is. We also have to know how to lay this out. And when I see this, for me as a programmer, here's what I see, just to let you guys know. I see, okay, this is like an H2 tag, and I see a card here, and then I have this card arranged in rows. Another thing, if I squeeze this down, you notice that it's responsive, and now it's 2 cards. And if I go, maybe out to like a tablet size, it's 3. And if I squeeze it all the way down, it's going to a stacked interface. And so this is called responsive. So that's kind of what I want out of this app. Now,
by the way, just before you go on, Bree says it's a Chinese sci-fi movie. So
Alienoid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we can get it somewhere with subs on it. I don't know. But
yes. Yeah, it should be. All right. So right off the bat, I think this is a fairly simple site to do. In fact, if you looked at the scale of what we produce here at the bootcamp, they're way more complicated apps than this. In fact, this kind of makes the portfolio in a certain section in our like smaller projects I've built section of portfolios we built here. We don't look at this as a capstone project at all.
But it's a little bit more than just a regular web page, isn't it? It's just a tiny, because it's pulling in an API.
Yeah.
So
it's pulling in an API, so there is some data flowing into it. And so I've got a folder here open in VS Code. And so I'm not even going to try to attempt to make a development environment in here, because you can't, because this is running locally on my machine. So there's no way to do this. Okay. So you have to start with a little bit of knowledge right away to do this. And so inside of a standard project, I'm gonna go ahead and make some folders here. And I always make a folder like JS and CS. I don't have any images in this. And then I'm just gonna create a new file, and it's gonna be index.html. We could go through the process of doing this and then showing you I got to make it anyway, but just know we've tried a lot of ways and practiced a lot to see how much we could get AI to do. And so we're not trying to cripple it anyway or not show you something it can do to make fun of it. It's just that when you have local resources on your machine, this chat window here can't write to that. Can it create a script that we could do? Yeah, and you have to execute the script, so you might as well just do it here. So I've got a chat window in here. I'm gonna see if I can clear all this. I'm gonna say new chat and just start over. All right, and so what I want to do is create this website that does this. Inside of Copilot, we have the chat window here, and this comes up, and this is like ChatGPT. You can type prompts in here. You also have press Control-I to ask GitHub Copilot to chat or do something. And so I can do that right in here. I can hit Control-I. And that gives me this kind of text line here, and I can ask it to generate code. Or I can type something like doc type HTML, and it'll start finishing code for me when it thinks I need help.
Right.
So that's a completion, but you can see here, we call this ghost text. And so there's some ghost text in here where it's trying to make suggestions for me. And even this suggestion is wrong, Kevin. You notice it doesn't have an ending head tag, but that's
right.
Okay. And so now maybe it'll suggest it again, and it does. And I can hit tab and I can bring those in. Okay, so that's the 3 ways that this integrates into a coding environment. And what I would say is, just using it, can it make you type faster? In some cases, yeah. In some cases, when it's right. And what you have to be able to do, so if I come in here and I say type in a body tag, what I'm doing when I'm coding with this, and this is called the I call it ghost text. I'm reading this really quickly because I know what a body tag is, and I know kind of what I want. And I'll hit tab if I want to accept it or not. And then I'll come down here, and it's making some stuff in here. So it made this. Now notice what it did here. It talked about some PHP file that I don't have. Right. And what I want people to understand is, I know I don't have a PHP file. I know what PHP is. If you have no idea what you're doing, you're like, I guess that works.
Right, I guess I need an about.php file.
What is href? What does that mean? What is this link? And so you have to know some domain knowledge about what you're doing in order to have this happen. So let's see if it can generate something for us. So I want to build a website that displays movies. And I'm going to say displays popular movies. And I'll make this a little bigger so people can see kind of what I'm typing here. So like displays popular movies from using the TMDB API. Now this statement, I'm not going to run this yet, Kevin. You understand that I already know what the TMDB API is.
Right.
So I had to tell it that. So I have some domain expertise that I'm talking about. I know kind of what I'm doing, and also know where the source of my data is coming from. And what people are saying is that the CEO of the company is going to come in and do this. And I've worked at a lot of companies that I have partly owned, and I have fully owned, and I've been the CEO, and I've not been the CEO, and I've worked for people, and very few CEOs, even CTOs, project managers, dev managers really do have any more a domain knowledge of coding.
Right.
That's because they don't do it every day. And I would say that my prompting here is probably better than most, but I'm not the best prompt engineer on the face of planet Earth. So someone out there saying, yeah, but if you typed in this, my point is, if I have to learn about prompt engineering to a great degree to make this work.
Yeah, to a point to be like the 0.1%.
This is dead on arrival.
Yeah.
For coding.
Yeah.
Because like you have to know, you might as well just code it if you have to know at this great detail. And so when I had the chat group or the chat, not the chat, but when I had YouTube comment and guys saying, yeah, I'm going to type in a document, 300-page document, a dissertation on what I want, and it's going to generate for me. And that's coming in the next 2 years. You don't understand. And I'm like, no, I don't think you understand what a website is, because like there's a lot to this. So if you don't know where your data is coming from, okay, you might. So let's say that you do, and you're just like, I did a little research and I know I want a website. Okay. Right. I want to use cards for each movie. I need it responsive.
So are you going to, in your initial prompt here then, are you putting in as much information as you feel like you need to at this point?
Well,
like how much information are you
what I
in
would
it?
do is just do the least amount of information I could do, because I know I'm going to have to code it. But a lot of people think that you can do this and it'll just work. And so when I say responsive, will Copilot know what I mean by responsive? Maybe. It might. What I mean by responsive is it needs to work well on mobile, tablets, and desktop, and ultra wides, ideally. Also, I want to use Bootstrap. I want to use the latest version of Bootstrap. I don't have to do this, but I want to because I know it's going to break. So I want to be able to fix it. Okay. Anything else you want to add? Does anybody else want me to add anything to this thing? Anybody out there?
What have we got so far? Build a website that displays popular movies using the TMDB API. You have the word to in there. I want 2 use cards for each movie.
We'll just be grammatically correct. It'll figure it out.
It will anyway, but yeah. I need it responsive. I want to use the latest version of Bootstrap for a CSS framework. Okay. Sure. I like it. Go with it.
So let's see what happens. So it goes through this and it's thinking. Okay. And so it gives me an explanation. Now this is good. So if you're learning, this is pretty good. And so people say, could I learn from this? Yeah, you could. And then it's going to give me some JS files here that I could import. Okay. And that's it. So here's what's cool about it. So I can come here and for this doc here, and I can put my cursor right here and I can say insert at cursor. This is what's cool about Copilot. And where ChatGPT, you'd have to like cut and paste this into an editor or do something else. So I can hit there and it's going to put a website in here. Here's this right here. I don't know if this is right. So we'll collapse this for now just to look at what it generated. I think it is, but I don't know if this is right or not. So I would, for me, because I know that if this is wrong, Bootstrap won't get imported. So I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Okay.
Right. Well, let's see.
I've got a title, popular movies, and I've got a class container, and this is a Bootstrap class. And then I've got a row here, and then this is going to be called ID movie containers. And then it's going to say movies inserted here. And then I've got jQuery, Bootstrap 5.3, and then this thing called app.js. Okay, so let's look at my folder structure here. I've got a JS folder, I've got a CSS folder, and I've got an index page. So I've got my code on my index page, and I know right off the bat that if I write JavaScript, this ain't gonna work because I don't have an app.js yet.
Right.
And also gonna put it in this folder. So I'm gonna create a new file in here, and I'm gonna call it site.js because that's what I call mine. And then I'm gonna change this out because this isn't gonna work. And I've got a
Can you ask it to just change that now, though? With that,
here's what I've tried to do, and this is what's weird about this thing. Here's the other thing that you can do. You can highlight this code, and you can hit Control-I, and then they have some commands that'll say explain. But this one, and they say this in the docs. If you want us to fix code, just tell us to fix it. Don't type in a prompt.
Cool.
And so I tried this to see, and I would say that never use this because it doesn't work. And so what it's going to do is it says, to fix this issue, I would add the missing closing tag for the body and the HTML elements. And you're thinking, really? And if you don't know anything about HTML, you're like, okay, should I accept that? Well, no, there's actually, these are in here because I didn't highlight it. And so now it's thinking that's the problem, that this code is working, but it thinks that this is the whole code. It's like, well, that's not what I wanted. So, okay.
So that can't do anything with file paths at all, then?
It just doesn't. And,
Which is such a common error, though, right? That's such a common thing that happens. You're like, you things in a folder, or you don't have the right path, or whatever it is, or you got it in the wrong folder, or the file name is wrong and mismatched, but it can't tell you that. Okay.
And so here's why I think my experience is more valuable than most. And I don't want to say this in a like a conceited way. I say this from just experience. I'm teaching a boot camp, and I can tell you right here, teaching people to code for the first time, these pathing and how this is all connected is an absolute like mystery to people when they first start out. And so they're like, hey, my site.js doesn't work. I'm like, well, is the source file right to it? And they're like, what do you mean? Is this correct? And they have to learn that, okay, we're talking about this folder structure over here for it to do it. And so they would have something in there like what we just saw, which is app.js. So I'm like, well, did you name it JS? And they'll say, what do you mean? I'm like, well, is your file named this? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's over here. Did you name that file app.js?
I'm actually
either don't have one or they've named it wrong. You know?
I'm actually surprised this doesn't do that right. That seems like such a, while it is a complex like thing for beginners to get a hang of, I also thought that's something where AI would actually do quite well at.
And so I expected Copilot to know what this folder structure is, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So it doesn't know about the structure that this is sitting in. These are two different things in here. So it's working on this file, but it also doesn't have the knowledge in here of what the structure of the overall project is. So, and that's why one of my comments is going to be, as things get more complex, you need to focus on small problems with AI.
This couldn't be any more simple of a structure. I mean, this is as literally as simple as it gets.
It is. Okay.
Okay.
So we inserted it. Let's go back to our chat window and look at what else did it give us. Okay. So it gave us this HTML here. We're going to assume that this 5.13 pathing is right. Doesn't look right.
If it doesn't when we run it.
Okay. Here's the next thing. You'll need to replace your API key with your actual TMDB API key. Okay. I have talked to people, and a lot of times when I'm talking to people that are like, maybe they're running a division at a company, or, you know, they're working in high level business. And I remember we were just sitting there at dinner one time talking, and I mentioned the word API, and the guy says, what do you mean? What's an API? I'm like, really? You don't know that? How I don't understand how you don't know that. And, then I had to explain what application program interface is. And then he's like, I don't understand that. What do you mean? And this is working at a tech company, and he's at running teams and whatever.
Right.
And I just found that interesting. And I realized that the lingo and the words that we use as coders every single day isn't ordinary knowledge.
Right. You're not shaming him because he didn't know it. He didn't know it because he didn't know it because he didn't need to know it.
Right. And so what I try to do in my career and in my life is explain this in a way that everyone can understand. And so like I looked at more of like it was for me using the 3rd letter acronyms. That's the problem with me doing it. Like I need to explain that better. But this right here, I think for a lot of people would confuse people. What do you mean? What I got to have an API key? Like I don't understand that. What do I do? And so what we have to do is go out to OpenAI or TMDP API and register for a key. There's no instructions here to do that. And so you just have to know that you need one of these to get it to work. Because this code, as it sits, probably isn't going to work in general anyway, because look at this jQuery crap that it's using. I'm not even going to put that in there, Kevin. We're going to get rid of that.
It went with jQuery? Again, but why did it do that? So it made a decision to use that, right? You didn't mention that anywhere, obviously.
Exactly. And this is why I say like, oh, stack doesn't matter. And they're like, well, do you want to use jQuery? And everyone's watching this like, nah, bro, that's not what we want. I want to use the fetch API. Because that's modern jQuery. Now,
But here's the thing. You wouldn't know that if you don't know it.
You may not even know this is jQuery when you're watching it. It's because it's got these $signs on it.
Right.
That's not what I want at all. I don't want this like this. This is kind of weird. So the other thing too that I know is this line of code here is the API for this. I'm going to assume that this API is correct. I mean, from memory, this looks correct. Okay. But I'm not sure. But what I do know is that I don't want to pass the API key as a query string.
Right.
I want to use a different kind of API key. I want to use a bearer token for that because I'm going to pass that through the header of the request. That's what I want to happen.
So doing it this way, by the way, does this leave you, is this like a security issue then, doing it this way?
Well, it's just that if you type in a URL, this key is going to be in the URL in the browser bar.
Okay.
Every request you make goes over the wire, and then your key
definitely don't want that then.
You don't want that. Okay. Now you want to put it in the header, and it's passed through the headers, which you could still uncover, but it's not in the browser bar. And people use tokens. That's the accepted way. You can do this, but we don't do that anymore. And this is what I mean by like, people say stack doesn't matter. It's for computers to talk to computers. It doesn't matter. And it's like, well, it does matter because like there are reasons why we do things a certain way.
This makes me wonder about like people using these kind of tools and then putting this stuff into production, whether we're going to end up with like this in the future at some point here soon, some massive security issue with like,
yeah, sure.
Because
and we're reviewing it now.
Right, because it worked. So
do it at all.
Because it works, right? This technically could work, right? It
technically could.
Even though it's using kind of outdated practices and insecure practices. It's going to work. So somebody's going to be like, okay, cool. Let's just throw that up there. Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, actually.
So let's just do it some other way. It says, and this will do it, and it's going to say what it's going to do. It's going to like use these columns here. That's kind of cool that it did that. And so it needs to...
It's using Bootstrap, right?
Yeah, Bootstrap to do that. But to me, this is also not fantastic, but like we'll figure this. Actually, this isn't going to work now that I look at it. But like we have to alter this a little bit. All right, but let's say I want to use an async, and this is where async fetch for the movie API call. So I have to know what async fetch is, and I have to know that this is wrong. So I'm just going to do that. And it's going to
So what didn't you like about that one?
It's still using the API key at the top here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it is using fetch here, but it didn't do it as an async like I asked. This is the older syntax using the dot thens. I don't like that. All right, so I'm going to create a async function. So now I'm like coding from the prompt, and I probably could have done this by now, but that's okay. We'll say create an async function.
Typed async wrong, by the way.
Yeah, async function that uses a wait for the fetch. See if we can do it again. See if I can describe that better so you can understand.
But I would say at this point, you're pretty technical on your description to get this to do this correctly.
And I actually still don't like it. So I'm going to like, whatever, dude. Okay. I'm kind of done with this. I'm going to do it one more time. I said, separate the listener from the function. Now we're getting there. Okay. It's closer. One vulnerability, hard-coded credentials. Yep. Okay. Now, one of the things...
So it knows it's a problem.
Yeah. And it also has some other... And this is what's kind of cool about Copilot. It's like, hey, you may want to ask me about this, you know? And I think it does that because they know that this is a Copilot, and the programmer will go, all right, I got you, man. Don't worry about that. And so I'm not going to ask it that. We'll do that later. And so this is JavaScript, okay? And so I know that this has to go into my JavaScript. So I have to just know that. So I have to come over here and open the file.
Right.
All right. And then I have to open my chat window. And then from here, I can push this in here. And I don't even really know if this is actually going to work, but we'll look at it and see. Right. So I'm going to close it and we'll look at it. So look at this. It's still got the API key here. Not a fan. Okay, so let me just modify this. And so I want to say use a bearer token instead. Use a bearer token.
I'll just throw this comment up there while you're doing that, by the way.
Yeah.
I said obviously it wasn't trained with breaking the code. maybe that's what we should do. We should just train it first, then make it read the book, then ask these questions. Maybe we'll get different answers.
Yeah. So this is getting better. And so like now here's the problem you run into is this modification. So like now I've got this other one in here. So let me just get rid of this now and delete it and then come back and let's add the new one in here.
Here's the thing I would say already about this while you're doing this. Like, okay, so I have a very kind of fundamental understanding of like some development stuff, APIs, like a basic understanding. I already, with doing this, would be lost. I can tell you right now.
I know.
I already wouldn't be fixing the things that you're fixing because I wouldn't know to fix them.
Right. Yeah. And so now I need to get my bearer token here. Okay. And so your bearer token goes here. So I could maybe, I understand I got to paste it here. It's one thing I could do. Okay. But I'm going to like not do that. And so I'm going to copy my bearer token here. And
is this going to matter, by the way, if you put this up here?
No, because I'll go change it. Okay. And it's not the whole thing anyway. So
okay.
If you screenshot it and use our token, that's fine. I mean, but like
we'll change it anyway right after this.
I'm going to change it right after this. So, but I have to do that because I need this to kind of work.
Yeah.
And so then I would come down here, and I've got this constant right here, and I need to like insert this constant in this string.
Yep.
Well, how do you do that with JavaScript? Well, I just know that I can use string interpolation. So. And it tells me, see, notice there, it told me.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
But it also didn't tell me that it can't start with single quotes. It's got to start with the tip mark, which is near the tilde. And they look the same.
Why?
But you got to do that. So that way it can know to do a replacement here.
Oh, that's because we're using that literal string in there. Whatever
the literal. Okay. This is called template literals inside of JavaScript.
Yep.
So I know that.
Right, and that's because you changed that, right? To be
I changed
the original one would have worked had you put the code in there, right?
The whole string in there,
right.
It could have worked.
Right. I got you.
But I wanted to do this because ideally, this is coming from another place or somewhere else. It's not coming from this hard-coded value in here. I'm going to put it in either. I don't know.
Yep.
It doesn't really matter. And so then we can look at this and we can say response, maybe this works, maybe this works, maybe this works. And then I do know, because I know about the API, that the object that comes from Pop3 Movies is called results.
Okay, so we got that right. That's cool.
I think it works. I mean, we can set a breakpoint here and look at it. And then I've got to know about this right here. So like this is HTML that's being created. So it's looking for something called movie container. So let's look and see if it got that right. So we are going to put this in the movie container here. That's kind of cool. It got that right because it knew when it generated it before. So this is probably right. And then we can say enter HTML.
Is adding this HTML to it, right?
Yeah. And so what I'm going to do is change how this works, because I know that's not going to work. I'm just going to say call.
What would it have done? Do you know?
I don't know. We would have to just, it would be, it's going to try to add them, and it might have 3 and 4 and 6, and it might work. But I can tell you that I don't want to do that. I just want to make a bunch of calls in here, and this is the Bootstrap thing. And then inside that column, I'm going to put this card in here with the overview and the title. And oh, it did this. This is nice. So the other thing that happened here is that's kind of cool that I haven't seen it do before is that we have prefix image paths. So typically when you have APIs, you have this something called a base URL. And what they say is, we're not going to store the URL for everything in our API. We're just going to return the absolute URL, and it's up to you to take the base URL and append to it.
Right.
The other thing inside of the API with TMDB is there's different sizes, you know, and so this is saying use the one that's 500, and there's smaller ones and bigger ones. And so this is okay. Notice here, it's got this card image top. We're assuming that's Bootstrap there. I think that's a Bootstrap class. I don't have entire Bootstrap memorized. And so we'll see kind of what it does. Okay.
Yeah.
Now the thing that I do know, I'm gonna have to come over here and I'm going to change this to work like it should inside of Bootstrap. So we're going to say row calls 1, and I just
makes it responsive, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and
hold on, didn't you ask for it to be responsive in the first place, though?
I did, and it may have worked that other way, but this is way better. This is just, it's more, you can better see what's going on. So this is telling it, hey, depending on the breakpoint, make 4 columns or 3 columns or 1 if it's really small. So like this is super small phone, medium means tablet, large and above, we're going to put 4 on there. Okay. Kind of what we're going to do. And then this container here is going to be middle of the page with a little bit of gutters. I don't like this, so I'm going to change this to XXL. And the reason we would do this is because when you maximize things on your 42-inch curve, it goes edge to edge in a container, and we're saying don't do that.
Right. Okay.
Kind of stay in the middle on a 42-inch curve monitor, and don't try to go edge to edge. So anyway. All right, so I think maybe that'll work. We hope anyway. So we've got this site.js. Let's just check it one more time. So we've got our API key. We've got our function here. And this is saying add event lister, DOM content load movies fetch. All right, and so this isn't in a function. So when this is loaded, maybe this will execute. Let's ask it. You know, let's say we didn't know how it worked. We say, how do I execute this function on load? Let's see what it does here. So it's got this function. All right. Okay. So we need this now. Again, I know this. So I'm going to put it after it because the event listener has to be done it. And I think this will work.
Let's try it.
Okay. I think. So we hope. Open live server. The other thing that I find difficult to do is because I'm using code in here. It did go to the API though. It pulled it back.
Yeah, it did.
And it didn't do it. The other thing that I think happens here for me, and this is for me as a coder, when I'm using a lot of boilerplate generated code and I'm not in the process of thinking through all my solutions, I end up with stuff like this. I'm like, why did it do that? Because I was just trying to modify what it did. Now it works on mobile pretty well.
Yeah. But now you're right. I agree. Now it's more difficult for you to kind of like troubleshoot, isn't it? Because
for me it is.
Yeah. No, like, I think that I agree with you.
What did it do?
Like, right. Yeah. You're trying to understand.
I'm not designing it. So we'll have to go inspect this and see kind of what it did here and look at the HTML it generated. So I've got this call here, and this should have worked. Movie container, but it didn't. It always put it in one. Okay, I'm going to ask if it can figure out what it did here.
Yeah.
Maybe I spelled one of these wrong or something like that.
I like that idea. Yeah, ask it why it's always in one column.
But it did generate the calls, and it's got a card in there, so that's kind of cool. And it's got the images right. Yep. It's okay. I mean, it's not perfect. You know?
But it pulled the data back. The design's
pulled the data back. It's kind of ugly, but like, hey, it did do it. And you know, it's kind of weird, but that's okay. So let's see here. This right here, and I'm going to pull this into my chat here because I know this is the problem here. I don't know. Otherwise, I'm going to the Bootstrap docs to go look at what I did wrong.
Right.
I spelled that right. Yep. 4, medium 3. Yep.
So then just ask it now then, why does it always show in one column?
And I don't think it knows.
Okay.
I know that.
Yeah, we understand that part of it. We don't want to know why our particular code only shows in one column.
So I'm going to let's go look at our function here, and this is not going to help us. See if we can troubleshoot it. But it did work sort of. And so we've got a div here, and then this is in here, and then this is here. And then this is call here, and this is in here. And so, okay. And then we can go over here and look inside of our container. We're putting a bunch of calls in here. Okay. And
it's not because it starts with just row on its own, is it? What does that one do?
So this sets it up and says, hey, this is a row.
Okay.
And this sets up how wide is the row based on the breakpoint is what it's trying to do.
I see.
So what I'm going to do is, it shouldn't do that. It should just do it like this. And let's see here. It should work. Let's go here, index. I'm going to look at my sample, Kevin, and I don't feel like figuring it out. So I'm going to look at it.
This is where the troubleshooting part, like you said, is more difficult because you didn't actually write the thing. It's kind of like you're trying to troubleshoot the code that the AI wrote. Just more difficult to understand the choices it made, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Give me 1 second here. I'll figure out what I did.
was wondering if it's something to do with its original solution too, that it...
No, it should do this. I mean, this should be doing it, but it's not. And then it's like this card, and I think it's maybe...
Oh, you think it could be that fast there?
I'm going to try to reduce that. Maybe it's just breaking it and it doesn't know how to do it, but we'll see. All right, run it again. It may be too big now. Who knows what it's going to do?
Oh, let's see. No.
It's definitely not. It's broken here because it's like this in here. So let me inspect it one more time.
And that is going full width too, look.
Yeah, so it's going full width in here. So I'm going to see if I have a div in here. And then a div in here. I do. That's card body. And then this is in here. So it's going full width for some reason. It's doing that. And then this is attached to this guy.
People have put up, there's a couple comments here. I don't know if either of these are going to be right, but somebody said maybe call MD, and then Mohammed said call 6. If that means anything to you?
No, it's just that what call 6 does is like, hey, make this half the page, and what we're saying is, I want this to make it as wide as it can be based on the breakpoint. And so when you do this and you combine it with this, it says, hey, make those calls 3 wide, 4 wide, or 1 wide. And that's what that's doing. And that's why you use this, because it's just a simplified thing. You don't have to make this different every time. You just make it one size.
Right.
So, and it should work. So let's see if we've got this right here. I'm going to take this off so I can get back to the original, what it generated for me. And you can see right off the top, man, this isn't exactly like what I want. It's not doing what I thought it would do. And then this works. This works.
Well, you think you'd be able to ask it now, just to ask the thing to say, hey, it keeps putting it in one column. I want it to be responsive.
Yeah.
Like, and it should be able to fix that.
Yep.
Understanding the code that it already has right now, but it can't.
And I'm looking through this to see if they're all together. So it generated that correctly, and then it generated that correctly, and then I have a call in there, and that is correctly in inner HTML. It's going inside a movie container, and then this movie container
has its own
this. Yeah, so it should represent, but it just doesn't. So anyway, so what we could do to test this, just to show you and test my theory here, is we can comment this out here. And this time when I run it, it won't run. So it'll just be blank. Right. And then I can put some, I thought it would. Well, let's get rid of the whole thing. So this does just work like that. Okay. So we don't need this at all. And then it'll just not run now. That's what I want to do. So make sure it doesn't run. Okay, that's fine. And then I can come back here and test my HTML. This is how I would do it normally, is I would just put a div in here and say class equals call. And then I would come in here and say, yeah. So, and you can see
a dummy kind of placeholder.
Yeah, and you can see it's pretty cool, like what it did there. Like that is the brilliance of this, but it's always
that's where it is kind
not
of
quite right.
Yeah, well, that's against Copilot, right? It's kind of trying.
Yeah, it's trying a little bit, and so like you have to check your divs here, and so that's right, and that's right, and then I've got this thing here, and then this thing here, and that should work. And then I could put a p tag right under this. movie description. And then I can even do this, like here. I know this is also something that's kind of cool. So I can say lorem ipsum, and it'll just put some stuff in there.
Okay, that's cool.
And so what I would do is I would lay this out in the template almost just like this. And then I'm going to copy this. I mean, I need 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I have a bunch of these in here. So then I could run it and just see kind of what my layout is. And this is how I'd mock it up. And then I'm replacing this at runtime.
Yeah.
And so I do have an image, but this is breaking here. So I don't know why it's breaking. So it's not obeying that. So call.
You know it is something to do with the layout.
Yeah, it's something to do with the layout. So their code may have been right, but it just doesn't work. It should just work, man. Unless I'm just an idiot, which is possible. I could be an idiot.
I think it comes back to your point around, because you didn't write it all out, it makes it more difficult to understand.
This should just work like it is, but it doesn't. Let's just make it 1 or 4 and then run it and see what it does. Unbelievable. You know what it could be?
What?
I'm going to bet money that bootstrap thing is wrong.
Oh, you think?
Yes.
513 could be.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go to Bootstrap and go get it. And these are the things that will make you look like an idiot on YouTube. Like you don't know what you're doing, but you trusted the AI.
Well, no, the AI gave it to you. So
yeah, and then so I'm going to go grab this. I'm going to grab the version I know works. So maybe that's working. So I'm going to get the latest here, and then I'm going to go to the download.
So just so you know, it did use 513 isn't the latest then. So 533
Yeah, well, I knew that. Yeah, I knew
but the fact that it didn't
the latest one is just down here, and I don't think it's different. Look at that. It's just different. All right. And maybe StatPath has it. Maybe it doesn't.
Right.
Maybe it did have this at one point in time and it no longer has it.
Right.
But we're going to change it.
Right.
And then we're going to take
this is
the script and put it at the bottom. So
I'm confident. We should have actually known this when I made the joke earlier that we'll see if that bootstrap seeding actually works. We just assumed that it was, and it's like, well, it's right. Like what?
Yeah. Or I need to check this jQuery thing, though it won't matter this one because we're not using jQuery.
Right. And actually, looking back, you know who got this? You know who predicted this? Shelly did.
Who?
My understanding, Copilot is pulling from GitHub, etc. So the most recent references, like CDNs, are not likely to appear. So
look at this, Kevin. It works now. That's what it was.
There you go. Like, well done, Shelly. You got it right.
I was losing my mind. Like, why does this not work? So, like, that's Bootstrap for you. Like, it's kind of cool. All right.
Yep.
So let's fix it up now, and then we'll take our template code out here. So we want to do what, 3, and then I just said row calls, because I can't tell you how many times in my life that I've typed this line of code in.
It's a lot.
Maybe, thousands of times that I've done that. And I'm like, I know that works. So we'll check it one more time. And boom, there you go. Got 4. And I can even put this in the emulator here. So I can say developer tools. And I can even check this in my different sizes here in the emulator. So I'm going to go to the emulator. And so the phone 12. This is what we do in the class. Hey, look at that iPad Pro. Mini's a little smaller. You got 3. Yep. You flip it over, it's got 4. So it's kind of cool. It's not the greatest, man. We still have problems here and between the rows.
It's closer.
It's closer. So if you come in here, we could probably put a gap on it. And I just know this, man. Like, what I'm saying? We probably could prompt it, maybe. It's possible. So what I'm going to do now is fetch the movies, but I'm going to change this up too in the beginning here, because this also has a problem right off the bat. So when this runs, before I do it, I need to set this to equal to nothing. Otherwise, it's going to continually add more and more movies to it. So this is a problem when it does this. Okay. So this will get rid of my sample code in there.
Okay.
And it should return movies now.
Let's see.
See if it does it. There you go.
Cool.
So we did do it. But what I would say is this is the pinnacle of how you do it. Could someone be better using AI than me? Sure. But the process that I went through, you have to know a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think the caveat to that is, could somebody with less knowledge about domain but more knowledge of AI do better than you? I would say no.
No. And the problems I ran into, what caused us 15 minutes, was because of AI. Like, I would have made sure that my stupid link here was right.
We actually, it's funny because we both joked about it, and you said originally that it's probably going to not work, and then we just didn't think to go back to it. But
and so that's not performance art. I forgot about it and thinking that I'm going crazy down here, like this doesn't work, and it's the most junior thing ever. Is your CSS style sheet linked? Well, AI said it was, and what I would say is, it doesn't know that it was wrong when it initially did it.
No. I would guess though, the fact that Shelley pointed this out too. This must be a common issue with a lot of these CDNs.
They're
just to know that when it pulls in, they're gonna be wrong. You're just gonna have to fix them. But you have to know that. Again, the person that doesn't have the domain knowledge, let's say that I did this, I would have had a much harder time finding that.
Some people would never find
ever.
This, man.
I was gonna say, if ever. Yeah, true.
Right.
True.
And so I probably could have went in the developer tools to see if this loaded in. To see if it was in there.
But again,
but then you got to know about developer
knowledge
tools too.
Exactly.
You got to know, what it is. And the only thing that the reason I came across it is because I know this works. Like, I was doubting myself, but my coder brain was saying, dude, this works. It works all the time. Like, what am I doing? I know this works.
Right.
Nothing's changed between now and 20 minutes ago when I did this before. So anyway, I think this is the state of the art of it. And what I want you to understand, what people we can go back to full screen now. I'll go back to talking head here. And I can go back to Kevin here, is that that's the pinnacle of what we're doing, what we're dealing with. And if you don't know how this works, you have no chance to build a website, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you could give this to somebody who has no clue and tell them to put a website. Not at this point. I don't think it's even close to that at this point.
No, I don't think it is either. And the thing that as it gets more complex, this becomes increasingly, the value proposition goes down, because then you're looking at thousands and thousands of lines of code and multiple pages and multiple folders that was generated by something else, and you have no idea how it was put together. And I can say, for veteran coders out there, it would be as if you walked into day one on Windows and they said, Windows 11, we got this bug in Windows 11. I need you to fix it. And you're like,
right.
I need to look at the code first. I need to figure out how it was done.
And good luck. There's like a billion lines.
Dead, and he didn't do it anyway. And so I need you to figure it out. And it's really hard. It's really difficult. And so the prospect is selling us a bill of goods, and this is going to change, or we're no longer going to build websites. And if you don't believe me, just look at the current CMS marketplace and why does Squarespace exist? They were saying they were going to put people building websites out of business a long time ago, and we're still building websites, man. CMSs, Squarespace or Wix, you can go look at what types of things they can build. Can you build coderfoundry.com with Squarespace? 100%. You can absolutely do it. We do it.
Yeah.
But we know anything more complicated than a form, you got to do something else.
Even a form sometimes with Squarespace.
Yeah. And even when you want to integrate JavaScript into something, which you can show our payment calculator. We had to push that to somewhere else because it couldn't run that JS, because it won't allow you to load JS to it. Why? Because it can break the sandbox that it's in. So, and there's valid reasons. So I had to write that, make a different page, and we link out to that page. It's a problem, and that's 30 years of development in CMS experience. I'm not saying Squarespace has been around for 30 years, but the guys that started Squarespace also had the advantage of looking at other CMS tools and everything else and like, okay, here's some problems that we're going to solve. And that's the pinnacle. And even in that case, everyone that's out there wouldn't think Squarespace is sufficient for their needs because they want more control over it. And what we want to do, and what people are telling us to do, is we want to actually step back from pre-built templates, boilerplate code that we know works, into something that generates code that sometimes works. And I think it's a step backwards from taking a boilerplate. I'd rather have a collection of templates on Squarespace than try to build coderfoundry.com from a prompt and only know prompts. I can't do anything else. I'll just never get there. I don't care how many times you prompt it. It's not happening, man. Like at the current iteration. So I'd like to see the haters out there that think I'm like purposely trying to like say that this doesn't work, but it doesn't, man. I mean, like not at what people are saying it does. And
it's a useful tool. It is a good Copilot.
Yeah,
we saw it do some great things today. It was good.
Right.
The stuff that it does well. It's like people like hating on AI. It's like, no, we love AI. It's great at what it does, but don't give it magic it doesn't have.
Right. Exactly. You notice it generated jQuery, and then I had to prompt it 2 times to tell it to use an async function. And the only reason I want to use async functions is because that's the way modern websites are being built, with async and await instead of JavaScript.
Right. And you think it would know that, but you have to remember how the AI works. It is just, it's taking a bunch of existing data and trying to predict what it thinks you want based on that existing things. In this case, it's like all of GitHub, right? So it's thinking all of GitHub, and there's probably a whole bunch of jQuery on GitHub, which of course there is. We know it's still massively popular.
Probably more jQuery than there is async and await functions.
Right, exactly. So it doesn't know that you wouldn't want to use jQuery. It thinks, well, my source over here says there's tons of jQuery, and that works, so let's just use that.
Yeah. And then and they had stack path for Bootstrap, and maybe that particular link worked at one point in one time, or maybe it was trained on data where the Bootstrap was linked wrong and it never worked. And like, and then it's like, you have to validate every single output that you get from it, and you have to know how to validate it. And I still think today, and for the foreseeable future, man, like if it could do it, it'd make websites right now, but it can't. Like it can't, and that should have been job one of this. And if everyone knows that it's a lot harder to take HTML and CSS and make something cool than it looks like on the surface. I'm like, well, surely it can do that.
Right.
And I would say that our website wasn't even great. I mean, like, it doesn't have an ab bar in it. You probably could have done that. There's no footer on it. Like, I had to add the gap in it. And then even that is kind of, in my opinion, very vanilla.
Here's the thing it doesn't have. It doesn't have any kind of sense of taste or...
No.
It really doesn't. It has no clue. It's very black and white. It'll give you exactly kind of... I should say it'll try to give you exactly what you ask of it. Whereas it wouldn't... I don't think it would design a good page. It wouldn't know color palettes and those kind of things too. It definitely wouldn't get that part right.
No.
No. It wouldn't know that I'm creating a site around, I don't know, like for a surfboard shop. Therefore, it would use a lot of like blues and like purples, maybe.
Yellows.
It would it probably wouldn't do that. It would give you something that it doesn't understand, that part, the human part that makes it look correct and have the right color palette, let's say.
And then we thought about, and if you guys have any got kind of our students out there, you guys know our like landing page quiz that we give at the end of the Bootstrap course that a lot of people struggle with. And because we were using art direction and saying, here's 6 images based on the breakpoint, display the proper background. And, the problem you have is like, if you have an image as a focal point, you need to crop them correctly based on the breakpoint and then use media queries to do that. That's was the initial thought. Like, let's build that. And I'm like, that's harder than this movie listing. Right. I know it is because people struggle with that thing. Yeah. And we're sitting there teaching them Bootstrap for weeks, and people still struggle with that when we push it out, because it is more difficult to do. Yep. And that's modern websites. That's the base website that's the base requirement, that it looks good on mobile. And it's going to have a hard time doing it. And so as we get more complex, so once we ramp this up and say, build United Airlines ticketing system, make sure that all the planes get where they need to be, make sure the crews are in the right place all the time, and make sure if someone goes in and says, I'm going to be sick today, that it knows how to get another pilot there on time for the plane to be there. If we did that, it's just going to fall apart. And we know what happens when there's just snow in Denver that cascades through the whole system and nothing happens, and that's with a fully functional system. Imagine if that was a black box that no one knew how it worked. How would they fix it?
Right. Yeah, we're so far from that. We really are. We're just so far from the promise. And we love the idea of the promise. The promise of this push button that delivers this thing is amazing, but it's just sci-fi. It is. At this point, it is pure sci-fi.
Right. And so and then another thing too is like the final thoughts on this is like, we're using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Once we go to more complex sites, let's just take something like React. React has like 1,000 choices to build the stack out. The back end, is that going to be the back end? And then things like that won't exist in this. It's like, all right, I need to test this on my local machine. What database did you use for that to code? We're using Postgres. How do I get that? How do I install that? Like, what do I do? And you can prompt all that out, and maybe you can go get get Postgres to run on your machine. And maybe you can figure out what the connection string is to your copy of the database. And maybe you can figure out how to like store that connection string in a variable with the host that you're going to go to. But and that's just
a lot of maybes and a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, it is. We have to tell people how to do this. And then you have to, the other thing that people don't understand what coders do is like, there isn't a set of rules that we follow for every single website. We have an abstract set of skills that we use to solve a concrete problem. And that's what makes coding hard for a lot of people, is because when we're teaching people how to code for the very first time and they've been through high school, or even they have a 4-year degree in college that wasn't technical, how do you pass the class? Memorize the set of questions, regurgitate that information on a test, and you get an A. Yeah. And the first time we tell them that you can't memorize .NET, they're like, what do you mean? You mean I have to know all this? I have to memorize it? That's, I'm like, no, you just have to know it. You have to know what you can do, and then look up the information that you need at the time you need it and do it. You're not going to put this in memory. And that blows people's minds when they're trying to code for the first time. Because they're used to having concrete knowledge just on concrete things, and there is an answer. There isn't an answer when we're writing code. As you see, there's 3 ways to write that function. I liked one of them. I didn't like the other 2 that it gave me. I don't want to use jQuery. So
I don't know why our Taco Cat didn't come up there.
Okay, we can display it, right?
We did get. I can't redisplay the Taco Cat, but Bree.
Thanks, Bree. Yeah. I'll go get some tacos right now.
Yeah. Let me just see. I don't know why our little thing didn't come up there. Guess we haven't used this for a minute. Let's see. I'm looking weird to the side because all of the descriptions they're all vertical like this. So I'm like trying to read it like this. I'm trying to see which one. There's like 40 different overlays in this thing we have here. I'm trying to figure out which one it is. I can't remember what we called it. But yes, Bree, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Definitely.
We're gonna do. I think we're gonna go live more often now. I think I like doing these, so I think that you guys can learn a lot of things from it. And also, too, I want you to be absolutely clear on this. If you think coding's in your career, I'm not saying it's the only job out there, and I'm not saying Coder Foundry is the only way to learn how to code. What I will tell you is that if you thought coding was a career that you wanted to follow 3 months ago or last year, and you're not doing it because of AI, you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
I promise 100%. You that AI will increase the number of jobs out there over the next 10 years.
I have this weird feeling that this gap that we've always had with developers will, like, this thing will have, like, in 2 years' time, there'll be this weird blip where it's like, there's not enough people to code AI because of what happened with AI, and people didn't take the career path, which means, to me, that just means there's just a massive opportunity for people. If it's a smaller pool, that means their salaries are going to go up because there's going to be competition for people. That's the way I look at it. It's good for those that did choose, bad for those that didn't.
To me, everyone says the other industry they're not in is going to die because of AI. You know, I can sit here and say, you know, lawyers are done, Kevin. And if I get a trial lawyer on here to tell me like all the reasons why AI won't do that, you know, it's, you know, or I don't
want a trial lawyer who's AI, please.
No, I don't want to do that. Do we want the doctor to come in and it's just a face, you know, like the Max Herbman face, you know, and we talk to the doctor AI face? I don't think we want that. We want a human that's going to like discern or look into our, because it's not just a diagnosis. It's not that simple. It never is that simple.
No.
The thing that I would challenge the guy, if I was in front of the NVIDIA CEO who makes, you know, he could buy everything I own like 47 times. He's way more successful than I ever be. Probably, and I would say in general, he's smarter than I am. You know, I would give him all that credit in the world. But I would say, do you think your AI is going to generate or replace all of the engineers so that you no longer have to have engineers to make those new chips? I know the answer to that without even asking him. No. Why? Because what we're inventing doesn't exist yet. Exactly. And that's what I'm saying about websites. It doesn't exist, and you can't recreate it because it's an abstract concept and a concrete problem, and it's just not going to do it. It can get closer. It can help us. It can maybe, you know, but sometimes it causes me problems like it did today. It's like, gave me a bad link to a CSS file. Should I have seen that earlier? Probably. But, you know,
the point is, you might have seen it, but somebody else wouldn't.
Would never find it. They're like, I don't know why it doesn't work. It just doesn't do that. So it's going to stay in one column all the time. That's what AI gave me. That's what Devin gave us. That's all we have. Yell at Devin.
We'll see with Devin. I'm interested to follow Devin. When it comes out, we'll definitely come back and take a look at it for sure. Because maybe we can do the same exercise again using Devin when we have access to it to see what it can actually do.
It's going to have a problem. It's going to struggle.
I think so too. Well, I'll be interested. I think it'll be great. We'll definitely come back and do it. It'll be fun. Make another video.
AI assistants are really just different chatbots with different inputs that still do generative text generation. So OpenAI creating AI assistants it's not really anything new other than that we do have a run command. We can run things. We can upload documents to it. We can include those documents into the context window. It gives it more capabilities, but at the end of the day, it's going to take a prompt and generate text. And and everyone tells me, like, wait till ChatGPT 6 comes out. It's going to kill you, Bobby. I'm like, it's already been chained on all of GitHub. Like, what else can we give it? Like, what else does it need to know? Like, how many times do you have to tell someone to write an async function before they get it? You know, like, you know, you failed the boot camp there, Devin. I mean, like I tried to tell you in 3 months, but you failed. And that's the way I feel. Like, how much more information does it need to do it? And I think AI will be good for coders. It'll change the tooling. It's going to give us better tools. It can make us potentially type faster. And it does, man. When you get in a role and you're just typing tab, I didn't show that because, you know, people wouldn't know what's in my brain. But like when you're just coding, it can make you faster, but not 10x faster.
Right.
You know, there's already people that I've seen code that blow me away with their typing speed. It's crazy good. Like, and if you ever seen people do it, you're like, okay, that's next level right there. You know, like I can't do it as fast as they're doing it. That's next level. I had a guy here who didn't even have letters on his keyboard.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And he was a fantastic typist.
Like, why do you have no letters on your keyboard? It was like the German Das keyboard or something, wasn't it called? Yeah. Something like that. I remember seeing it. I was like, you just have a black keyboard on your desk, dude. What's going on?
Black keys, baby.
Doesn't want to look at them. Doesn't want to look at the keys.
It's in my opinion, that's a flex. And if you know, I don't want to mention his name, but if you're watching, props, man. You can really type. You have bad typing skills. So, anyway, that's it, man.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, we'll be back with some more of these for sure. Yeah.
Yep, you can still learn to code and get it and pursue this industry. You still can do it. Whether you come to Coder Foundry or not, you can still do it. AI's not taking it.
Yep. Cool. So, okay, we'll be back again at some point with another one of these. We'll do some more coding.
Later, guys.